Zettelkasten, death by category. Hello everyone, my name is Persohn. You can contact me at pastor@mascot.church or in the comments below. If you like these videos, like, share, subscribe, comment, whatever. If these are a blessing to you, let me know. If there's more you want me to do on this topic, let me know. I'm going to continue the Zettelkasten journey for your benefit because it's benefiting me tremendously. I hope I'm able to encourage you to think about some of these things. We've talked about why this works and how this works and so on. In my last tutorial, we discussed, or I showed you the type of cards and how to build them and what have you. Now, I was using I was actually still using these paper zettels cards, and I think I'm going to do that because they're just easy to use. You can toss them, whatever. You don't feel so bad if you mess one up. But we have just acquired these nice cardboard 3x5 cards, and these are much more permanent, much more robust, also larger. Remember, atomized thoughts, you don't write too much on them, and got a box that we can start to fill. Now, my wife kindly also said, hey, you need one of these. There was a pink version, and I said, could I have a blue version, please? And that's basically a travel box with zettels in them, so I can take it with me to work. Excuse me. And then we can, then I can bring them home and add them to my collection. Now, the Zettelkasten approach is a knowledge mapping approach. It's a mind mapping tool. By the way, if you notice me looking down there, that's where my software is that drives this environment. When you're a one-man show or a one-person show, you have to deal with your own tools and so on. And I could use my phone, but you can't flip back and forth between screens on a phone, where you can if you use a product like OBS Studio, which I'm using now, which takes a lot of learning to get right. Okay, back to this anyways. We've now moved, kind of lost my train of thought. Zettelkasten is a knowledge management tool. It helps you to take the knowledge that you have and to manage it and to see it in a way that actually works. Now, I'm going to show you an image here that is not an uncommon image, but I think you'll kind of get the sense of where I'm going with this when you see the picture. This is a neural kind of mind map. It gets you an idea of where we're going with our zettels in time. You can see thought clusters. Perhaps these are cards that are clustering on the side. And can you see my mouse? Yes, you can. It's not very large, but that's all right. These are thought clusters here that are related. You notice these node points here are gathered together thought clusters. And this in the middle is a node that might be connected to other nodes, that might be connected to other nodes. This is probably not far off where I am at the moment. I've begun to get things kind of organized. Now, this takes us to the topic of categories. How do we categorize these things in order to make them useful to us in the long term? How do I take my cards here that I have, or when I get them in the next box, and put them in some sort of a meaningful order? I can also, actually, I can grab these and just put them out all the time. I doubt, though, when you get to hundreds that you're going to do that. Well, the first category, or the first card that I have that may not be white, it'll be different, will be what's called a bridging card. And if you go back to last week's talk, you'll note that I spoke about the importance of a bridging card. A bridging card is basically a card that links together all the topics by ID. So you can see here, can you see that ID? That's me scratching this morning, and that was 202207229M. I got up to M today, which is really interesting. If you put the date in this order, it is year, month, day, and then sequence. You can always put these where they belong, and that's really, really convenient. If so when I'm on the road, I can create zettels and bring them home and stick them in the box where they belong in order. Now, I found that the order is really interesting because it demonstrates my ongoing perception on various topics. As I get better at topics, it shows me more and more. Where was I 2 months ago, where am I today? It's interesting. Knowledge management is fascinating because it helps you to manage the knowledge that you have. Categorization. Now, over the many years that I've been in the workforce, I've worked regularly at venues, things like race clubs and stadiums and so on. Venues that do a lot of catering and provide a lot of beverage, and that's how they make much of their money on event days. When you put these systems in, and I've lost count as to how many I've put in over the years, you begin with a sense that you somehow have to categorize your raw information. Now, in the catering world, there are two fundamental categories, and that is food and beverage. It's either a food product or a beverage product, chiefly because there are two fundamental departments that typically deal with those things. The beverage department usually has its own suppliers, and the food department its own suppliers. And often you'll have food-only things like conferences or meetings during the day, but there's no alcohol served, and the food department does it, and the beverage department is largely uninvolved. Now, sometimes you have category problems where things like orange juice and coffee and tea are provided by the beverage department because they're beverages, but food has to use them. You're already seeing some category issues. When you start putting those things into a system to make them work and to make them work efficiently and make them work from both a purchasing and a supply end, there's a compulsion to over-categorize things. I don't have any data, but I'm putting together and already slamming categories in place. Let me give you some examples. How would you categorize beverage in a department? Let's say that you have a venue that serves 50, 60,000 people on a big day, okay? Well, I've got beverages. So I have bottled beverages, canned beverages, I have beverages on tap. Is that the way that like the tap machine? Is that the way that you want to categorize your beverages? Or would you say, no, I want my fundamental categories to be beer and wine because the only thing that's on tap is beer? No, it's not. Soft drinks are on tap. And maybe there is wine on tap. And they say, oh. And so then you say, well, let's just go with beer and wine. Okay, so then you have beer and wine, then you have chilled, non-chilled, or then you have by the bottle, by the can. Well, not so much the wine, but you have by the glass, by the bottle. And so you have all these categories. And then you say, well, is it white and red? And then you say, okay, white, red, sparkling. Oh. You can already see that these categories begin to be really onerous. Do you have categories and then subcategories? Do you have categories of purchase and then categories of supply? Do you have, how do you stock? Do you stock according to how you purchase or how you sell? For example, if you purchase something in a box of 24, is that how you stock it? Or do you purchase it in a box of 24, but you stock it as a unit? How? All these things then become category issues. Now, I have watched venue after venue exhaust itself too early in the over-application of categories. Food is worse. Food is much worse because you have categories like dry goods, fresh goods, fruits, vegetables, beef, meat, poultry, and then you have dairy, and then you have condiments, and then right? I understand these categories are not only necessary but essential, but I'm also aware that an early application of the categories can exhaust you and you can lose heart doing this kind of work. And I've seen people do it, just get exhausted in the job. Now, in terms of your zettels, you will ultimately categorize them. You're going to categorize them in terms of things that mean something to you. And what means something to you, what pops off the page, something you record, may be completely irrelevant to the next person. Zettels are highly personal, and this is the same thing that you find with knowledge maps. Knowledge maps are really, really personal things. Group knowledge is extremely hard to categorize, but your own individual knowledge, and the zettels work very well. This, when you look at this neural pattern that I've just shown you on the screen, makes a lot of sense. I can put things together that way. I can get my bridging cards working. Now, coming back to my neural image, remember I said a bridging card is a card that draws together a number of cards by their ID. Where would the bridging cards be, just as a point of review, when you get to categorizing your zettels? When you get to categorizing your zettels, where would the bridging cards, what would they represent here on the neural? They would represent each of these nodes. Now what you see here is quite a simple device in a node diagram in that all of the nodes on the screen are connected to a primary node. But that is not in any way how your knowledge is going to work. You're going to have bridging cards that bridge to other bridging cards. And you'll need to think about that. You're going to have bridging cards that will bridge to a single note in another group or another nest altogether. And this will begin to develop. And as it does, you'll develop an understanding of yourself, and your efficiency will begin to increase. Your productivity will begin to go up. It'll begin to rise because you've gathered all of this. Now, the other thing that happens once you get this into this place is that noise and that chatter in your head is reduced. You don't have to keep all those things in your head anymore. Okay, so what's the progression? The first progression in this journey, if you come on it with me or if you're on something similar, is to take atomized thoughts that stand all by themselves, and grab those atomized thoughts and write them down so that they do stand by themselves and give them an ID. That's the beginning of your journey. If you're able to tag them as reference notes or fleeting notes or whatever, that's good. That's cool. I wouldn't be too married to that to begin with. Then after a while, I don't think on a daily basis, I think that's too soon. Unless you're doing a PhD or something and you've gathered maybe 100 notes for that. One of the references I've given you in the past is a young lady doing a PhD, and that's what she has to do because she has to get finished in that time. But in time, you'll gather all those things together and the categories will become evident to you. And you'll say, wow, this is interesting. It will also show you a lot about who you are and what interests you. Now, I have a project that I must finish, but I really have no interest in the next phase of the project. I don't want to do it, but I have to finish the project. In other words, I'm going to have to force myself into that territory. I'm going to do this in reverse. I'm probably going to start with a bridging card that talks about what I'm going to do, and then I'm going to read material related to this new skill I have to teach myself, and when it's important, I'll create the zettel and immediately pop it on the bridging card. In other words, I'm going to use the approach in reverse. Rather than looking at the world around me and recording those important thoughts, I'm going to force myself into that territory to get this project underway. And these are some of the things that you can start doing using this tool. Okay, I think I've probably said enough. The point here is don't over-categorize too early. Build your categories in time, see how the categories work. The categories will reflect things that are of interest to you today, and you will also be able to see areas that you should be interested in that you're not, so you can build on top of all of those wonderful things. Okay, so my name is Al Persohn. You can contact me at pastor@mascot.church or in the comments below if you like. If these things are a benefit to you, share them with somebody else, like, comment, subscribe. You know the drill. We'll be back probably next week with more on this topic. This has been Zettelkasten, Death by Category.